5 lessons, 5 years, 5 long, crazy years of full-time coaching, the biggest lessons, light bulbs, things that I've learned for me as a coach and a professional, for me working with athletes, everything between tied into take-home points, action steps that you can do starting today to get better. So let's get into it. First, for some context, I have episode 160. This is 181, where I have 4 lessons from 4 years of full-time coaching. So I'm not here to repeat any of those points, but if you want to dive into that episode, lesson 1 is imposter syndrome is very real. Lesson 2 is there's value in everything. So basically, whether it's going to a conference that might not necessarily be in your field or your interest, or learning about a skill or something else completely not coaching related at all, there's ways to tie things back into coaching no matter what it is. Number 3, it's the people that take you the furthest. And number 4, everything works out. And technically I've been coaching 4.5 years, but I already made that episode, so we'll just call it 5. And I have 5 good lessons. As well, episode 163, I have the 3 lessons from 2023 specifically. So this is that I can only make athletes err. So I can only make them faster. I can't make them fast. So basically genetics. An athlete is fast and their ceiling and floor is basically predetermined. I can raise them up from their floor, but their ceiling I can't really do much about. It's the sport that matters most. That is point number 2, that basically an athlete can be a warrior in the weight room. They can do all those things right. And on the flip side, someone can be pretty underwhelming in the weight room. But at the end of the day, to be good at the sport, you have to be good at the sport. Number 3, variation increases transfer. This was a big light bulb, just working with athletes at Northwestern for such a long time, so consistently, which I hadn't had previously at TC Boost, where the value and accessories really are and kind of what is the point, and that a little bit more variation can help transfer and actually get better at sports. And I also tossed a bonus in there, and that is that the minimums don't cut it. So basically a message was, everyone at the college level at least works really hard, does extra stuff on their off time, et cetera, et cetera. So the things that you leaned on to make you successful in high school is now the new standard in college. So what else can you toss on top of that to get better? Fit is an online programming software that helps you train more athletes in less time with greater individualization. For in-person or remote training, Fit does so with a streamlined programming process, decision-making trees to help you integrate data into your programming, as well as better communication with all pieces of a high-performance model involved to break down silos. Learn more at fit.io, that's fytt.io, and tell them that Matt Tometz sent you. So here we are, the 5 biggest lessons from 5 years of 4.5 years of full-time coaching. And this was similar to the minimums, but a question that I would ask my baseball guys that I thought phrased pretty well and got some light bulbs was, how many future, this was in the fall, how many future first team all Big Ten athletes are missing practice because they're banged up, because they have little bumps and bruises and things kind of like that, or how many modified practices do they have? And the answer, shockingly, was probably not many, if any, at all, right? The athletes that are there to put up consistently high numbers and consistent numbers, for that matter, are just there and they are available. And because they're available, they can practice and they can get better. If they're available, they can train and they can improve the skills that are going to make them better at sport. And another story was at TC Boost. I had a group of 12 high school baseball athletes throughout the course of a fall. And, for September, October, November, we were rocking and rolling. And then come December, when it came time when all the fall sports ended and it came time to pick up the baseball stuff just in the cage more, pitching lessons, whatever, basically TC Boost got cut out of 9 of those 12 athletes, weekly routines. And 3 of them decided to continue for December, January, and then into February for tryouts. And shocker, which 3 sets of parents were the most satisfied and pleased with their results from their time training with me? It was the 3 that kept training. You're pretty smart. So basically the moral of the story is attendance is the biggest KPI for progress. And I know that that's not sexy to say, but, reflecting back on my own journey, it kind of sucks to admit, but I was never in a trained state as a college athlete, right? Now I worked really hard, and in high school I lifted a bunch and stuff, but there was no rhyme or reason. There was no direction, right? And then you get into college, I played at a small Division II level. The fall, you have your lifting, but we didn't have a strength coach back in, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18-ish. We didn't have a strength coach. And then winter break, I didn't have access to a gym. So I was just either lifting in my basement, or I think in my latter years, I just went to the local kind of rec center. And then, we'd lift for January, February, and then we'd be in season, and we'd only get one, optional lift, or one lift where you get to do whatever you want in season. And then summer was just dominated by jobs and internships and being on top of that. So I would train, but it was so kind of sporadic. So the ability to string together, 3 times a week plus of training for more than maybe 12 weeks at a time, maybe just the fall, basically, just never really existed. And it's oh, well, that's the reason I didn't get that. That must be the only reason I didn't go pro, right? So I think it's important to reiterate a point like this to your athletes, that attendance is probably going to be the biggest KPI for progress. Or if it's, 365 days and we look back, of course, there's a bunch of factors like what are you actually doing and things like that. But I would bet more often than not, or probably the most highly correlated variable with the amount of success an athlete has over the course of, let's just say, a year of training, is basically how many sessions they had, right? So lesson number 1, the best KPI for progress and consequent success is attendance. Number 2, the secret sauce to training. And I was networking. A coach reached out to me who was at a Division I football strength coach in the Mountain West, and he wanted to talk all things 1080 sprint, as that's a piece of equipment I've been fortunate enough to train on and have made plenty of content on. And he wanted to learn kind of how to get to that next level of their 1080 use, and using a little bit more advanced things like the force velocity profile and bucketing athletes and things kind of like that. So from some of the consulting I had done with Northwestern football when I was at TC Boost, and from some of my own just rabbit holes and ideas of trying to do the same thing with my athletes at TC Boost, I figured, heck yeah, let's do it. Let's chop it up. So with all of these things, I've started to basically ask them about what they're doing and learn more about their training situation, their ideas, so then I can help them from where they're at currently instead of just pushing on my ideas. So, he went on and on about, we start with acceleration and we use this number and this number to bucket guys. And all right, well, if they out-test that, then we get into top speed and then we have that bucket and that bucket. And, well, here's where we just train and here's where we actually individualize. And basically at the end of him kind of telling me everything that he did, I was like, yeah, no, that sounds pretty good to me. I would do the exact same thing. I actually do the exact same thing. And I think it's interesting having chatted with more coaches, having followed, more coaches on social media that do good stuff, and also just having more kind of coworkers throughout the years, that we all do very similar stuff, or at least it's not rocket science, right? And just with how training is becoming more professional, there's more continuing education, the ability to get information is higher than it's ever been. I think it's an interesting exercise to think about, if I took, my speed program and 4 of the coaches' speed programs, if they have a background in it and they think that they do good speed training, could you be able to point out some, my program versus someone else's? And it's not to say to be different just for the sake of being different, but we all have our own unique lenses and experiences, and odds are, hopefully, there's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 things that are staples for you, that you have strong convictions as to why you should or shouldn't do certain things, because that's what makes a coach, and that's what makes, certain programs different from other ones. If it was as simple as copying and pasting and we all do the same thing and we all coach it the same, then why am I more valuable than someone else? So here's an actual exercise that you could go through, is what could you talk about in an interview? What do you view that's maybe slightly different? And basically, this is a way to show a little bit of nuance and context to say, at Northwestern, for our competition peaking phase, we did pull-ups twice a week instead of one, right? Or rotating my accessories every 2 weeks instead of 4, and explain why I believe that. Or why, banded A runs I try to do 2 or 3 times a week, even if it's just, 2 by 5 seconds in the warm-up. So those are things that, yes, all of these things are going to be in a program. Shocker, swimmers do pull-ups, right? Shocker, accessories get progressed just like anything else. And shocker, like a banded A run is a great foundational mechanics drill. But the ability to show that nuance, that expertise, that here's the way I think about things and here's why I do it a little bit different. I think that there isn't as much secret sauce as you might think, or probably 80 plus programs, right? If we look at 5 exercises, probably 4 of them are going to be super similar, right? You have your explosive, you do your speed training, right? Acceleration, top speed, change of direction. Then you get into your explosive lifting plus like a med ball or a plyo. Then you get into your lower body strength plus a core or shoulder care and accessory. Then you get into your push pull, and then you get into your accessories. Not rocket science. So within that, don't reinvent the wheel just to reinvent the wheel, but where can you show your unique lens and nuance and expertise, and what are those few things that you do a little bit differently? Basically, what is your secret sauce? Coaches, this podcast is sponsored by Samson Equipment. They've been providing elite strength training equipment and professional weight room solutions since 1976. If you value quality products, great customer service, and a company with integrity, then make Samson Equipment your go-to. Visit them at samsonequipment.com, that's SAMSON Equipment, and let them know that Matt Tometz sent you. ISOFIT is not just pioneering isometric strength training, but they are opening up a brand new world of possibilities with health and performance benefits through isometric training and their own groundbreaking product. With patented force matching technology, they're reshaping the boundaries of functional health and human performance. Discover the future of health, fitness, and sports performance at isofit.com. That's ISOPHIT.com, and tell them that Matt Tometz sent you. Number 3, network like friends. And I've told this story, but I'll tell it again as hopefully there are some new listeners here. And I was talking with Steve at TC Boost, talking about networking and wanting to connect with coaches. And I just said, I just feel like the only time I text some of these people, and they're really good people, super nice, I really enjoy chatting with them, and I want to provide value to them instead of me only sucking value from them. But I only text them when I want to connect or talk about stuff. Or the only texts that I have is, hey, let me know if you have an hour this week. And then a few months go by, hey, would love to connect again. And Steve just said, well, when's the last time you texted them about something else? And I would pull up some of these text conversations with these people. And literally it was like me saying, hey, when are you free? And then them responding. A few months later, hey, when are you free? Them responding. And I think it's important to think about networking like friends, because when you do only communicate with them about connecting, then it is transactional and it is professional and it is only about networking. So I think the idea is first understanding that networking can simply just be like, hey coach, I see that you guys got a big overtime win this past Friday. Congrats. Must have been electric. And they just like that text, or they just say thank you. And that can be that, right? You're reaching out to them, showing them that you care beyond them as a professional, or saying like, hey, I saw on social media that you just bought a new house, like hope moving goes well, right? Different things kind of like that. Or, hey, I just listened to a podcast and I thought of you, and, just thank you again for your time and everything. So think about how you would communicate as a friend and then communicate with them like that. Now, of course, there is a boundary and they aren't actually friends, but how do you go from professionals to friends? Well, that's slowly communicating with them more like friends. So if you think about them and it makes sense and it's not excessive, text them. Number 4, it is really about expectations. So here's a cringy analogy, feel free to steal, that I'll start this point out with. So let's say you and I both get our CPSS textbook, the one that I have right here. on Thursday. So the exact same event and thing happened to us. But the difference is your email said that the book was supposed to arrive on Friday. And my email said the book was supposed to arrive on Wednesday. So my book arrived one day later than expected, and your book arrived one day earlier than expected. So the exact same thing happened to us, but I'm pissed and you're ecstatic, right? And if I were to ever run a business that like sold products, maybe not every single item, but maybe like randomly one every 3, I would just, somehow find a way to add one day to the expected delivery. So then one of every 3 customers, their package gets there one day earlier than expected. And how awesome would that be? And how bad is it when there's something you buy on Amazon, you're super excited, and just gets delayed. Just like, geez, like this is the worst, So I think it's important to understand, if we talk about coaching and accountability, one of the little bit harder topics or more nuanced topics. And, there were times this past year at Northwestern where it was times for me to hold athletes accountable. Let's just say they failed the last few reps of a set. When I said, hey, no failing reps, it's not the point of this workout, right? And some other examples kind of like that, like how to fill out a sheet, or just, basically trivial things. But I would say, or have to say, in my opinion, that's on me. I didn't put that out there. But in the future, here are the expectations, here's the rules, here's whatever it may be. And how awful is it when someone gets on you for something and you're just like, I didn't know. Like obviously if I knew that I wasn't supposed to do that, then I wouldn't have done it, right? So on the flip side, being able to put things out there ahead of time, right? So basically every program, once a week, or whenever things kind of came up, I would have a sticky note with a few basic, 2 or 3 bullet points for the workout. And when I was, highlighting, going over the workout before it started with the team, I would say things like, hey, this is only week 2. You're supposed to have at least, 1 in the tank. We'll get to a little bit more of like a max later, right? So then in the future, if they fail reps, then I can hold, hey, I said this, earlier today, or I said this last week. And on the flip side, creating those expectations of, let's just say like networking, of saying, hey, I want to talk about this. I'd love to know if you have, 20 to 30 minutes. So then they know, okay, well, that's how much time and that's what they want to talk about. All right, like I know what to prepare beforehand and things like that, versus like, hey, coach, would love to just learn about how you train athletes. Let me know if you have time. It's just like, oh, geez, what are we going to talk about? How long is it going to take? And like, can I just send them like an article instead that I wrote about, some questions they might have and things like that? So I think being able to get those expectations ahead of time for your athletes, for accountability, for you interacting with others, and also for your responsibility. I remember when we were going over staff responsibilities for traveling with the Northwestern baseball team, just saying like, hey, who has what? And then consequently, we can just crush all of those things, and we're not like 12 hours away from home confused as to who has this or who has that. And it's just such a simple thing to do, and it takes a little bit of thinking ahead of time. But to get stuff done, to keep everyone aligned, going the best way possible, everyone needs expectations on the same page. And basically expectations I can apply to basically anything that you put out there. So be intentional about setting expectations either for your athletes or getting expectations for yourself and communicating those very clearly. Lesson number 5, and I think this is an interesting one, that coaches can get out of touch. And I experienced this myself. I remember it was the first week of speed school at Northwestern, and we were doing like a march for 5 yards, a skip for 5 yards, a run for 5 yards, and then sprint for 10. And then shocker, when it turned into the sprint, all the athletes just like dropped and drived, right? Their posture bent, their knees dropped, their chest dropped, and they just lost all of their form. And I would say like, hey, keep your, good posture, knees up, just like lean into it and maintain that posture and then run from there. Don't just like turn it into a run like if you're starting from nothing, right? And the feedback was, oh my gosh, like that was so hard. Like, why did my knees drop? And it's just like a drill. It's week one. And I'm like, this is such a rudimentary basic drill. Like, why is this getting this reaction, right? Like, I'm glad that we're getting light bulbs for sure. But to assume that athletes have done all of these things, right? Or to assume that they think this stuff is as rudimentary as I think it is, right? Because I do this stuff every day. I've coached the same drill with however many athletes for years, right? Or a recent online client of mine, is phase one and we're doing basic drills, and I'm a little bit concerned that like I might underwhelm them or the drills might seem a little bit too basic. And we're just following up about to write phase two, and they're like, oh, I really like this workout. It felt really good. I like this drill and that drill. I'm like, oh, those are like the most basic drills that I put in there, but like, sure. So I think, we as coaches can grow numb because we do this every single day. We eat, sleep, breathe it. We consume continuing education on it and things like that. When I'm coaching the same session 4 times at TC Boost, well, there's still an athlete who it's their first day at TC Boost, even though I've been there, 3+ years. So I think whether it's trying to get variation just because we want something new that I've done in my own workouts, and it's like, can athletes do the same workout every day? Like, doesn't that get boring and monotonous? And then I look back to me playing, and it's like I did the same thing every day for like 4 years, because I like that routine. So it's like, am I changing the warm-up to make me feel better, or am I changing the warm-up to make them feel better? So take a step back, ask yourself, are you making these changes or not? Or are you trying to get a different feel or whatever it may be for yourself or for the athletes itself? So just something that I've experienced actually quite a lot. And it's interesting that that this made the cut. But don't abandon things. Don't do anything too quick or just because, when it's more of a you thing than an athlete thing. And let's connect the dots on some of these lessons as I wrap this up. So if we all do pretty similar stuff, if we all have the same sauce, let's say, to stick with that language, well, what's going to be different, right? How do you get results if we can all do 85% of the same stuff? Why should an athlete train with you over someone else? Well, I think if you can get your athletes to show up the most, right? If you can set those expectations on the importance of attendance and teaching them about their body and recovery so they can recover a little bit better and not miss time. So then they're training more consistently. And then you have your own special sauce, your own secret sauce of, your 2 to 3 things that you double down on that you think is super impactful, that might be a little bit different than someone else's program. And they're getting that much more of the secret sauce, and they're getting what you believe in is going to get them better results. And then it kind of all goes from there, right? So also with the expectations is like, why are you showing up on someone else's phone? If the expectations every time, someone's phone buzzes and it says Matt Tometz on it, are they assuming or expecting that it's going to be, oh man, now I have to like block out an hour to chat with them, right? Or if it's like, oh, hey, here's this guy, it's going to be a thoughtful text about something going on, right? Or, oh man, it's going to be an awesome, 3-4 text exchange, and that'll be that, Or hey, they're thinking about me. This is going to be a meaningful text. So most of these things are rooted in expectations, and it's just being able to take a step back and saying, how do I do my job to set either myself up or the athletes up for more success, and then coaching the athlete in front of you instead of having these reflections of like your own maybe boredness or monotony with your coaching. So if I had to tie in action points to take home for you to get better, to make these things actionable, not just listen to some guy rant on the internet for 30 minutes. So lesson 1 of the biggest KPI for progress and success being attendance, what you can do is encourage habits to ensure the highest attendance possible, right? Put those expectations out there that, hey, if I'm not here to talk about, why you did or didn't get better if we can't do the basics of simply just showing up to every single workout and giving your highest effort possible. Number 2, 4, we all do similar stuff. So what is your secret sauce? Is write down or print out one of your workouts and circle things, or ask a coaching buddy, right? Here's a great networking text. Hey, I was listening to this awesome podcast. You should totally follow and subscribe and listen to it, and leave a 5-star review, obviously. Could we go through this thought exercise together? So what are your few non-negotiables that you think are a little different, and why? Or basically, if you were prepping for an interview, how would you answer this question? Number 3, for networking like a friend, if you think about them, text them, right? Like I was listening to a podcast on isometrics, and Kyle Salmons, he's been on the podcast before, definitely a professional friend, but we've had more interactions than just only about training and stuff. And I texted him, hey, I was listening to a podcast about isometrics, and all I kept thinking about was hearing your voice in my head saying tendons love load, because that's just like a phrase of his. And he said, haha, dude, that's awesome. Like, thanks for sharing. And then I said, hey, good luck this weekend, because he's now with the Arizona Cardinals. And that's just like such an easy example of networking like a friend. So if you think about someone, not excessively, be courteous and respectful of their time. But if you think about someone, text them. Number 4, create more clear expectations up front. And maybe that is you, as you write a workout down, let's say it's like an hour before your athletes come in, be like, okay, what are my few main points, the non-negotiables, the unwritten things? Obviously there's like, back squats, let's say, but how are they supposed to warm up for it? How are they supposed to keep track of it? What's the relative intensity? How close to failure are they supposed to be getting? And those are just, some questions that you can write down the answers to reiterate to the athletes, and also just not assume that they know those things. So you can look at your program ahead of time and say, okay, what are my expectations of them? Things that I might have to hold them accountable on, that I have to put out ahead of time. And number 5 of, coaches can get a little bit numb, a little bit tired of their own stuff because they do it so much. The action item for this is to take a step back and ask yourself, why am I making a certain change? Or why do I feel a certain way about a certain drill? And then asking yourself, is it for me or is it for them? And the answer is, it's for me to make me feel better. Then odds are you shouldn't change it or do that thing. Or you can simply just ask that to an athlete if you're concerned about it. So it's like, let's say it's been 3 phases of a similar-ish warm-up, reach out to the seniors, reach out to the upperclassmen before or after sessions, be like, hey, like, I know we've been rocking and rolling for a little bit. How do you guys feel about the warm-up? How's the flow? Do you guys like it? Do you guys want to change it up, and kind of things like that? So lean into your athletes for some of those things, because that's why you would or wouldn't change certain things, and it's not for you. So there's my 5 lessons from 5 or 4.5 years of coaching, some action items as well. Thanks for tuning in, and happy coaching.